In today's tutorial, we will look at one of the most convenient ways to get started with local AI models on Windows, macOS and Linux. For that, we will look at Ollama, which you can use as a standalone app for large language models or in the terminal to create your own AI models. It's super easy to set up and has a lot of customization options, so let's jump right into it. To install Ollama, simply go to the Ollama website and then click on the Download Ollama link. Here you can get the installers for macOS and Windows plus the install script for Linux. Simply follow your system's usual installation process and then open Ollama. This should give you a very simple but efficient user interface. The first thing you will want to do is to select a model that runs locally on your machine. I covered different model types in the last video, so make sure to have a look at that one as well. It's linked in the video card and the description and introduces some essential basic concepts along with the Locally AI app, which is a great way to run local AI models on iPhone or iPad. I would recommend starting with the Gamma 4 E4B model since it's relatively small but powerful and should work on most devices. It's about 10 GB, so keep that in mind. If you don't mind a less capable model, you can also get started with the Gamma 4 E2B model, which is around 7 GB. Then we can just start typing a prompt as we would with any other AI chatbot and press enter or click the send button. In the current version of my system, I see two bugs that hopefully don't appear on your device, but let me show you my workarounds. For one, there is no download indicator when you first run the model, at least not on my system. If you have the same issue, just stick around since I will show you how to manually download models in the terminal section. Another bug I see is that even if the model is downloaded, there's no indicator on the first message that something is happening. The response should show up once it's generated, but it can be frustrating if there's no clear indicator that something is happening. An odd fix is that you can briefly click another menu item like settings or another chat and then return to the original chat. Then things should show up correctly. Next, you can add files to the chat, as we were also able to do with Locally AI in the last tutorial. Different models have different capabilities, but many contemporary AI models can analyze and work with images or other types of data, such as PDFs. So you can simply upload a file here and ask a question about it. Right to the file button we have a new option, that is web search, which can be quite handy. There are two things to keep in mind though. For one, everything up to this point was completely local with no information sent to Ollama or any other server except for downloading the AI model itself. If you enable the web search function, Ollama might not collect your data, but the sites you open will see that someone visited them. This is about as private as any other web search, but something to stay aware of. Also, to enable web search you need an Ollama account. You can simply click on sign in and create one for free. Now we can ask things that the model itself might not even know from its dataset, such as how's the weather in Seoul today. The model should be able to find a website with current weather information and tell you in the chat. Of course, this opens a bunch of opportunities and can potentially give you more up-to-date and accurate information than the model's own dataset. Next, we can have a look at the app's settings. Most of these are self-explanatory, so let me focus on the one setting that's probably new to you. That is the context length at the bottom of the settings. Context length or context window is a super important concept when talking about large language models, and it's one of the few settings we didn't have access to in the Locally AI app. The following is a somewhat faulty example, but a helpful way to think about it. Let's have a look at the text prediction in your smartphone's keyboard. This is basically how an AI works. It considers the text that's already there and tries to figure out the next most likely word that might follow. One of the main distinguishing markers compared to a large language model is the context length. The keyboard might only be able to consider the last few words you've written, but it doesn't understand the idea of full sentences. For example, if you keep clicking on the next word, it never really finishes the sentence and even tends to get into loops repeating the same words over and over again. So to overgeneralize a bit, the context length is something like the conversational memory the AI has. The longer the context length, the more it can keep the conversation going and doesn't forget what's going on. Now you might wonder what a 4K, 8K, 16K and so on context length means. This refers to the number of tokens that the AI can remember. Tokens are kind of like words, but not fully. Let me explain. Tokens allow the AI to break down natural language into more digestible chunks. Let's look at it in practice. We can use something like a token visualizer that shows us how the AI breaks down our prompts and its responses. If we write something very common and short like "Hi, what's going on?", practically every word turns into one token. However, if we add something like "The weather is formidable and I'm looking forward to walking down the Kamo River in Kyoto today", less common words and names such as formidable, Kamo and Kyoto get broken up into multiple tokens. So tokens are in most cases just a bit more than words in terms of volume. Going back to the setting, a 4K context length means it can handle or memorize around 3000 words depending on the text complexity. But what does that mean in practice? For a casual quick chat, you will likely not fill up a 4000 token context window. But you should keep in mind that when you use files or super complex system prompts, they too can quickly fill up the context window. Increasing the context length is pretty easy and can be done by just using the slider in the UI. However, this also means more memory usage on your device. If you increase the context length too much with too little memory, your machine could crash. The crash scenario is actually one to consider on a few levels. For one, you should probably just save all your important files when working with AI, just in case something goes wrong. For two, it's a good practice to close all the apps and processes you can spare when using the AI. Otherwise, they will have to share computational resources and memory, which can make the AI more unstable or slower. So the bottom line is, try to keep the context window small if you don't need it. When you work with a lot of words or tokens and get to a point where the AI can't handle a complex task well or forgets context quickly, increase it, but try to do it step by step, not overburdening your system. And as a general rule of thumb, save your files and close everything you can spare to give the AI model as much processing power and memory as you can. You might wonder what kind of context length the latest industry standard models have. These larger models can have 10, 50 or even 100 times the parameter count of a local model and context lengths of hundreds of thousands to millions of tokens. Now, you simply don't need that much to write an email or a little poem. However, if you work with a lot of documents or code, this can be one of the greatest leverage points to improve output quality. While you could go back to the big AI services for these types of tasks, I still believe there are structural issues with them, whether it is the lack of data protection or the opacity of their business practices. An alternative solution is to use a large open model running on an external server. One option I personally like for this is available directly in Ollama and is free to test. After you log in, you can use cloud models, which you can choose easily in the UI. You can distinguish them by the cloud at the end. One we might want to look at is the largest version of Gamma 4, meaning the Gamma 4 31B cloud model. This is basically just a much larger and in that sense smarter version of the small 4 billion parameter model we ran earlier. These cloud models will also automatically utilize the maximum context length they support, such as around 200,000 for Gamma 4, even if your local setting is set to 4K. With an Ollama account, you can use cloud models for free up to a usage limit. You can check your current usage on the Ollama website by clicking the llama icon and selecting your username. Here you will see how many of the free tokens you've used up. Since I really enjoy Ollama Cloud, I got a paid subscription that costs me around $20 per month and gives me way more usage with not much lower quality than, for example, Claude or ChatGPT. It's worth noting that Ollama claims its cloud service doesn't store any data and doesn't use conversations to train models. Of course, you have to bring a degree of trust to any cloud service, but Ollama Cloud has been my favorite option so far. This covers most of the things you can do within the very simple Ollama user interface, but arguably Ollama's power resides in the so-called CLI. CLI stands for Command Line Interface and refers to programs that primarily run in your command line or terminal. So we can search for terminal on both macOS and Windows to open the command line. To see that Ollama is available on the command line, we can type Ollama-V, which should show the version of Ollama installed on our system. I told you earlier that I'd show you how to manually download models for Ollama when the download doesn't work in the Ollama UI. In order to download a model, we can simply type Ollama pull and then the name of the model, in this case Gamma 4 E4B. Now you might rightfully complain that nobody can remember all these model names, and you're totally right about that. The easiest solution is to return to the Ollama website and navigate to the models section. Here you can find all sorts of models, but let's go back to our default Gamma 4 case. If we click a model version, we don't get a command to download the model, but we get a command to use the model. So in this case, Ollama run Gamma 4 E4B. This is primarily intended to start a chat in the terminal with that particular model, but it will also download it if it's not on your device yet. Of course, there are more models to discover, but we will discuss which model fits your device in more detail in the next video. So let's put that aside for the moment and stay with Gamma 4. Let me start with the limitation of running LLMs in the terminal. If we ask, for example, for a comparison of 4 different GPUs, we can see that the formatting looks a bit odd. AI models love Markdown, which is a simple formatting pattern that's really helpful, but not necessarily helpful in a terminal setting, especially with tables. However, you can always select the response, copy it with a simple right click, and then either paste it into a free open source Markdown editor, such as MarkText, which I link in the description, or use the right-click paste from Markdown option in something like Google Docs. And all of a sudden, it looks much more legible again. You will probably wonder why go through the trouble of going into the terminal if you can't even get the rendered Markdown. One powerful feature the terminal offers is system prompts. System prompts, as we've learned in the last video, are a simple way in which you can add a general instruction to your AI model to follow whenever you talk to it. Let's first start a new chat by typing /by and running Ollama run gamma4 e4b again. Then we can start our chat by typing /set system, followed by the system prompt in quotation marks. To see that this works, let's test it with always rhyme. Now each response after this should be made rhyming. Another way to approach this is by creating models with system prompts. Creating models sounds like training models, which is not necessarily the same thing. For this example, let's create a coding assistant. First, I'll try to get a better model for this task. As we did in the last tutorial, let's go with Qwen 3.59b. While it's downloading, I'd recommend creating a folder somewhere. I just created one on my desktop named Ollama Test. Inside the folder, I create a text file. On Windows, it's just a right-click, then New, then Text file. This can have any name, but this is usually referred to as the model file, so let's call it modelfile.txt. Also, the model file usually doesn't use a file extension, but .txt worked fine in my test and might make it easier for you to open it in an editor. If you run into trouble, you can also just call the file modelfile with no file extension. Then we can open the file in Notepad or your editor of choice and start writing the necessary instructions. We have to first write from and then the model name, in our case Qwen 3.59b. Then we have a line break where we can write system, then quotation marks and our system prompt inside. If we want to write a multi-line system prompt, we have to put 3 quotation marks at the top and 3 at the bottom. This is much more capable than what we had on locally AI, where the system prompt was limited to 1000 characters. Here we can theoretically write as much as we want. Just keep in mind that the system prompt also uses up context length. I'll insert a much longer coding system prompt so we can try creating a simple website again. Now save the file. If you are on macOS, you can open the Text Edit app and go to Format, make plain text, and then save as a txt file later. To create a model from this file, we first need to navigate to the correct directory. You can either go there with the cd command and the correct path, or you can simply right-click the folder or the empty space inside of it and choose Open in Terminal. You can also go to the folder path, type cmd and press enter. On macOS, you can right-click the folder and open in the terminal. Here we type Ollama create Qwen 3.5-9b coding or any name you like, -f, modelfile.txt. A helpful trick to ensure you type the model file name correctly is to start typing and then press the tab key, which auto-completes the correct name. If it doesn't auto-complete, there's probably a typo. After creating the model, we can run it anytime by typing Ollama run Qwen 3.5-9b coding. Let's run the same prompt we used in locally AI last time. To add an image or any other file reference, we have to write single quotation marks with the path, so it's easiest to give the file a simple name and put it into the same folder from which you start Ollama. Now we can put it into CodePen and preview it like we did last time. Before we wrap up the tutorial, it's good to know how to view the downloaded models and delete the ones you no longer need. For that, you can open the terminal in any directory and type Ollama ls. This gives you a list of all the downloaded models along with their file sizes. If you find one is no longer useful, you can type Ollama rm followed by the exact model name. If it worked, it should return that the model was deleted. With that, let's summarize what we've learned in this tutorial. You now know how to run Ollama, use things like web search with AI, run cloud models, and create your own models with system prompts. In the next tutorials, we will look at other options for running local AI models on your machine that may offer features and advantages beyond Ollama. Importantly, we will also cover AI agents soon, which can have a tremendous impact on your workflows. So make sure to like this video, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future tutorials. Also, if this was helpful, please consider leaving a super thanks. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.